My next guest has a sound that seamlessly blends folk rock and modern soul. He's a storyteller at heart, and his music is filled with tales of life, love, hardship, and redemption. He has shared the stages with Kanon, Francesco Yates, rock legends Tom Cochrane, and Jim Cuddy. His new single, What Comes Around, was released in June 2023 as a follow-up to his award-winning album, B. What Comes Around plays on mainstream radio internationally in 7 countries and has been added to over 340 Spotify playlists. And we're going to hear it in just a few moments. But right now, let's spill the tea with Matt Zaddy. Matt, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Matt, you've been doing this for a while now. So I want I want to get a couple of your takes. First of all, when did you start singing? Were you one of those kids that was running around the house at 2 and 3 years old and singing away?
No, I wasn't. I was an instrumentalist far before I ever started singing, and I remember in my teenage years receiving some very not kind opinions on my voice. I sang at the odd open mic when I was in my 20s, but because I was playing a style of music where I wasn't the vocalist, because I can't do metal vocals very well, I really didn't start singing on a continual basis until I was in my late 20s or early 30s.
Now, when I started playing guitar at the age of 12 and 13, I did it to meet girls. How about you?
Spite.
Spite.
I was playing piano since I was 5 years old, and I started playing clarinet when I was 9. And when I was 12 or 13 years old, I believe I was 13, we had a family that was living in our basement. It was a mother and her son. And the son was a virtuoso violinist. He was 16, and his mother had pulled him out of school to study with the first chair of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. So he was a brilliant player, far beyond his years. And we had an old acoustic kicking around the house, and my younger brother was actually playing it. Now, Andrew, the gentleman who was living with us, he and I were friends. I was only a few years younger than him, and he spent most of his time playing music, which I liked. And he picked up my brother's guitar and learned to play it in a day. And I said, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And then very shortly afterwards, I fell in love with it. I took whatever was the first book that I had. It might have been a Hal Leonard or a Mel Bay book. And because I already had a theoretical knowledge, and because my fingers were used to playing piano, I did the book in a day. And then I just...
Now, you are married to an accomplished singer, songwriter, performer yourself. Is there ever any competition in the house? Like, does Heather say, I can hit this note. Can you hit this note? Like,
any competition we have would be far more subtle. I'm not really competitive with her, I don't think. She may say otherwise. But it's one of those things, when either one of us has a success, what we try to do is to celebrate it, because any success for one of us is a success for both of us. Like sometimes I was so happy for her this fall because as the Christmas season approached, she released a song last Christmas, which got added to a stack more playlist because it's a seasonal tune, so to speak. It just started it's like she did some promotion for it, but it started popping up on all these playlists. Yeah. And even in January, she's like, it got added to another playlist. And I said, that's amazing, because it's a good thing. So I wish her the most success that she can possibly have. And she wishes me the same. And every now and then, we're human. We might just be like, oh man, I wish my song was doing better. But I was very fortunate with my last single. It got more attention in a shorter period of time than any song I've ever released ever. In 6 months, it matched the number of plays that my last song had in 4 years, like the top song on my last album. Granted, I was one of those smart people that released a record right before COVID, so my marketing budget kind of went out the window. But the song itself did great. I got more. We had some very great targeted marketing. I had more YouTube plays, more Spotify plays than I've ever had before. And she shares in that success because we work together, not only performing, but we share a life together. So if I do better, our life improves. If she does better, our life improves. And there is a joy in celebrating people's successes. I remember when I was younger in my 20s, my band did not take off. We were very, very gradual with how our success was. So I was watching friends around me getting signed to these labels that I wished would even consider me. And it was hard, but I learned from that I can celebrate their success and learn from it rather than be bitter about it. Because it's very easy to be bitter about it. The same way that I could look at musicians who were colleagues of mine that I grew up with, that some of them are in charting bands that tour the world and that. But regardless of what the size of audience they're playing for and the one that I am, and I've sometimes I play for 20 people, sometimes I play for 20,000. And we're doing the same work to an appreciative audience, and that's really all you can ask for.
Many fans and music lovers look at the touring life and they think, wow, that is so glamorous. I mean, to be out on the road, you're playing gigs, fans are falling at your feet all the time. Give us the reality check, Matt. What's touring really like?
It's a lot of waiting. When I was younger touring, I was in a smaller independent band, and we were touring trying to build a fan base. This was in the younger days of social media, so YouTube was new, MySpace was still the popular thing, Facebook was extremely new, and the way that you would build it was to visit places where there was an established music scene, either trying to get an opening spot or as a touring band playing with locals, trying to organically build a following, which is a pretty old school way of doing it compared to now, where you go online, you perform either your music or somebody else's music, or do something interesting to basically say, look at me, to get people's attention. And then we've seen people build fan bases that way. And sometimes it's this sort of, moving gradually, which is what most people do, but we only ever hear about the viral stories. Touring for me in my younger years, we were not touring under the best of conditions. We had, half broken down vehicles and no money. So I remember I had a 6-week tour through the US where my standard meals on the road, I'm also vegan, so it's not like my diet's very different, was a can of chickpeas, a bag of coleslaw and Italian dressing, and carrots and hummus. That was my standard meal. Breakfast was always McDonald's, black coffee, and a hash brown when we had the money for it.
From the age of 16 to today, along the journey of being a musician, was there ever a time where you doubted it and said, you know what, this is way too hard?
Repeatedly. Repeatedly. I'm not gonna swear on your broadcast, but I'll mouth what I said at one point when I said I'm done with music.
And what caused that? What wave comes over you at that moment where you say, I don't want to, this is unbelievable. I won't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to Western. I'm going to go get my medical degree, and I'm going to be a doctor.
Complete and utter frustration and failure is the best way I can describe it. Most people, if you go a conventional path, it's pretty lined out for you, but a life in the arts is not a conventional path. It takes a lot of persistence, a lot of diligence, a lot of grit, and a lot of ingenuity to be successful at it. It can be done. I know countless people who have done it, and everybody does it a little bit differently. Like sometimes somebody in my position who does a number of different things will have one of those things really take off, and then they will focus on that one thing. I have certain things that I do that tend to pay me better. So because I live in a world where I need to buy things, I put more focus on the things that tend to pay better. But not just that, because sometimes the thing that I enjoy the most is the thing that sometimes pays me the least.
Well, let's get into one of the songs you wrote, Matt. This song plays internationally and has been added to over 340 Spotify playlists. So let's take a listen to singer-songwriter Matt Zaddy and What Comes Around.
All night you're out looking down at your feet, thinking how you got here and what does it mean. Journey through to here is gone to time and the sea. Only thing that brought you here is fate, it seems. Hard time. come round at the end of the day. Hard times come round, and here's what they say. You're looking for the reason to love what you do. Hey, you just need to look inside, you'll see that it's true. Hey, you just need to look inside, you'll see that it's true. Hey, you just need to look inside, you'll see that it's true.
That was Matt Zaddy and his composition, What Comes Around. Matt, what was the inspiration behind that song? There's a lot of feeling in there. I'm sure there's a lot of messages that were swirling around in your mind when you wrote that song. So what was the inspiration?
Well, I think it ties in very closely to what we were talking about right before you played the song. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on it. During COVID, a lot of artists did a lot of writing. I did not. I was one of those things that I had to kind of completely rework what I was doing in order to be able to make a living, basically, and to afford my life, to afford, the lifestyle, considering that normally about 65% of my income is from live performance, and that disappeared overnight. So I went from being an educator and a performer to being less performance and far more educating. But I had to get really good at one of these cameras. So I had to learn a lot of new things in a very, very short period of time in order to be able to recreate my income, so to speak. So between that and teaching 60 students a week, I was exhausted, and I had no real I had nothing left to write with. Now, when things started to get back to normal, I started writing again. And I remember I wanted to put out a new single for 2023 because 2022 was just like a catch-up year for me. So 2023, it's in the fall. I'm doing a little bit of writing here or there, but more just focused on the work that I'm doing. And I am the kind of person that when I give myself a deadline, inspiration kicks in. That's just how my brain works. If I don't have a deadline, it's a hell of a lot harder. So I booked a recording session with an engineer. The engineer I did my last album with is a producer named Ross Citrullo in Toronto. And I was preparing material, like I was making demos for him, and I was trying to come up with something new. And inspiration strikes at that time. So I actually came up with the majority of that song 3 days before the session. Lyrically, I tend to be a stream of consciousness writer. Like sometimes I'll have something hit me and I'll just write until my head or my heart says stop. And sometimes the song itself will bring on the ideas. And in this case, it was the song itself. I had a bunch of lyrical ideas come to me at the time. And what I was thinking about was I am a very task-based kind of person. And when I have something to do, I am far better. But my brain tends to not deviate from that. I just tend to focus, and then when the day is done and my brain has time to think of other things, it says things sometimes, like we were talking about, or what am I doing with my life, and what's the meaning of all of this? And I try to remember, despite the difficulties in what I'm doing, the wonderful experiences I've had, the people I've met, and the difference that I've made in a lot of people's lives. And I try to go to sleep with the knowledge that this is where I'm supposed to be, and wake up to fight another day, so to speak. So that's kind of what the song is about, is when the day is done and the mind is racing. It's I guess a story of hope despite the difficulties.
What's coming up for you, Matt? What's coming up in the future? What gigs have you got going on? Releases, new music? What's happening? And if people want more information about your music and where you're playing, is there a website, social media? Where should they go?
Sure. The easiest thing is to go to mattzaddy.com. So it's M-A-T-T, and then Zaddy is like daddy, but with a Z. So mattzaddy.com. Or if you search my name, it's a very specific name. My socials come up in a heartbeat. If you're on any social media and search my name, you'll find it no problem.
We've been in conversation with Matt Zaddy. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here. Thanks very much.